So for me, when I think back to gaming as a kid, it honestly felt quite magical. And I'd pick up my controller and I'd be sitting down at my computer feeling like the world around me was just absolutely disappearing. And a few hours could pass and I wouldn't even notice. And for me, it wasn't just the games that were fun, it was that they felt endless. And even the smallest games back then seemed like they stretched on forever. Little villages in role-playing games felt like a living, breathing city, and a short platformer level felt like an entire adventure, and that sense of scale wasn't just about what was on the screen. So, as kids, our imaginations really did fill in every blank, and I remember sitting cross-legged in front of a chunky old television and I was playing something like Pokemon Red or Blue on the Game Boy, or even running around in games like Spyro or Zelda, and it left me thinking that I would never really see the end of them. The towns, the forests, the caves, they all really seemed quite massive, and in truth, most of those areas could really be sprinted through in absolute minutes, but back then they were worlds to get lost in, and maybe you had the same experience. Maybe you can remember when one little side quest felt like it had as much weight as the main story, or when bumping into a random NPC felt like a huge discovery. Now, time really plays such a big role in all of this. When you're a kid, time just feels endless. Your biggest responsibility might have been school or even a bit of homework, and once that was out of the way, the rest of the evening was really yours to spend however you pleased. Weekends and holidays just felt like utter freedom, and if you wanted to spend 10 hours straight playing the same game, you really could, and you didn't feel guilty for it. There wasn't that little voice in the back of your head just telling you to be productive or reminding you about bills or even the fact that you've got work the next morning. You just played, and there was no hesitation and there was no guilt about it. It was just endless joy. And then there's the way everything felt new back then. When you're young, you haven't played hundreds of games before and you don't know the patterns. You don't really know that most RPGs have towns, a forest area, a desert, and then there's even a snowy section. You don't know that most games eventually give you a grappling hook or even a double jump, and every mechanic feels like a revelation. And the first time I saw a proper day and night cycle in a game, I was absolutely blown away. And I remember thinking, the world's alive, it actually changes. And the first time I unlocked fast travel, I genuinely thought it was the smartest thing ever invented. And now as adults, we've seen those features so many times that they really do just feel normal. But back then, they were incredible. And it's not just the mechanics either, it's the secrets too. As a kid, finding a hidden room in a platformer felt like discovering buried treasure. Beating a boss without anyone telling you how to do it made you feel like you'd uncovered some sort of secret knowledge. And the funny thing is, most of us weren't even playing with guides or online walkthroughs. We were just stumbling into these moments and letting them hit us with the full force. There's just something so pure about that. So, I think most of why games felt so magical back then is because we weren't analysing them. We weren't thinking about the frame rates, the resolution, and the fact that there's microtransactions, or whether the game was even worth the price. We didn't give a damn about the reviews. We didn't worry about whether it got good scores or not. We just cared about how it made us feel in that moment. And you played the same level over and over because you liked it. And it weren't because you were grinding for the loot. And you'd end up talking to the same NPC again and again just in case they had that one more line of dialogue. And everything was approached with curiosity and excitement, not with expectation. I think a lot of us really miss that feeling. The feeling of sitting down, turning on a console and just being fully absorbed in that moment. With no distractions, no stress, no sense of guilt. Just a kid lost in a world that felt bigger than the one that was outside your window. Those were the days when gaming wasn't just entertainment. It was a doorway, a way of stepping out your little corner of the world and into something that really felt infinite. So moving on, if childhood was about discovery and imagination, then the teenage years were definitely about energy and community. And for so many of us, this was really the golden age of gaming. And it wasn't just about playing anymore, it was about who you were playing with and the memories that came with it. This was the era of late nights that stretched into those early mornings. And you'd finish school, maybe get a bit of homework out of the way, but as soon as you were free, you'd be straight online or inviting your friends over. There was split screen on the sofa, there was even dragging TVs across the street for a LAN party, or even just logging into Xbox Live or the PlayStation Network. And these were really the moments that felt bigger than the games themselves. You weren't just playing Call of Duty or Halo or World of Warcraft. You were building stories with your friends, and every win, every loss, every ridiculous glitch that you ended up finding, they just turned into something you'd be laughing about at school the next day. Multiplayer wasn't just fun, it was utterly competitive and in a way that made you want to keep getting better. You'd spend absolute hours grinding a rank, unlocking a weapon skin, or even mastering a combo. And it wasn't because you had to, it was because your friends were doing it too, and every achievement, it just felt like it meant something because it was shared. Staying up till 2 in the morning or even 3 to finish a raid or to even finally beat another team, that just didn't really feel like a waste of time. It felt like being part of something. Those teenage years were also when new releases felt like events. You remember that, right? Saving up pocket money or begging parents to pre-order that game, queuing up at midnight for a launch that first week after a big release. It was just absolutely electric, and everyone was playing, everyone was talking about it, and you just really didn't want to miss out. So gaming wasn't just a hobby back then, it was really a part of your social life, and it was a way to connect with others. And for some of us, it was an even bigger part of our identity. You weren't just a teenager who played games, you were a gamer. What made this period special was the absolute lack of limits. You had more independence than when you were a kid. Still very few responsibilities compared to adulthood, and you could sink entire weekends into those marathon sessions, bouncing between those multiplayer matches, those long RPGs and party games with your friends. And it was all without feeling like you were losing anything. Those nights of laughter, those competitions and the chaos, they just stuck with you. And looking back, they're some of the strongest memories many of us will have, and it was all because they were more than just about the games. They were about being together and belonging to something, about feeling unstoppable in that moment. For a lot of us, this was the peak of gaming. It wasn't just about what was on the screen, it was about the people around us, the inside jokes, the shared victories and the thrill of being part of a community. Gaming during those years wasn't just entertainment, it was a complete way of life. So eventually adulthood arrives and everything ends up changing. Hours that you once poured into those games are now having to compete with the work, the bills, the relationships and the responsibilities of being an adult. All of this stuff constantly going on that never really switches off, and where once you could play all night and sleep in the morning, now you're lucky to even carve out a few hours on a weekend. And even when you do finally find the time, there's often a little voice in the back of your mind which reminds you of all the other things you really should be doing. And that guilt can hang over your head, and it definitely makes gaming harder to sink into. But for many, this is where the magic of gaming starts to feel different. So those multiplayer marathons and late night raids just don't fit the schedule anymore. And friends who you used to play with every night now have their own lives, their own jobs and their own families. And it's not just as easy as jumping online and finding a full party waiting for you. When you do finally manage to set something up, it's often more stressful than fun, and trying to juggle all your friends' calendars and making sure you don't stay up too late because you got work in the morning. Gaming, which once felt free and spontaneous, but it now really ends up taking quite some time to plan. But here's the thing, the magic isn't gone, and for me, it's just a little bit different. It's shifted towards those single player experiences. So I sort of treat games now the way I treat a good book or a movie. I don't really need the rush of the all night competitive sessions anymore. What I want is to be immersed in the world and to follow a story, and I want to feel something from the characters and the atmosphere. And games like Red Dead Redemption 2 or even The Witcher, or even the smaller indie titles out there, they give me that sense of stepping into another life without the pressure of schedules or the competition. It's not the same thrill as being a kid or a teenager, but it's definitely something deeper. And the truth is, gaming as an adult really does require a new perspective, and you can't chase those exact feelings you had when you were younger. Those lack of responsibilities, the late night freedom, the novelty of seeing something for the first time. But what you can do is embrace the way the games fit into your life right now. And they can be an escape after a long day, a story that stays with you, or just a moment of peace in a busy week. And if you decide to let go of that guilt and stop measuring gaming against your productivity, it's going to become enjoyable again in a quieter but much more meaningful way. And so yes, maybe the thrill of an all-night marathon is gone. Maybe games don't feel quite as massive or endless as they once did. But your love for gaming just doesn't disappear. It's grown into something new, and gaming as an adult is about savouring that experience, finding joy in single player adventures and letting the stories carry you away. Undeniably, it's different now. but it is still special and it's in its own way. That new appreciation might just be as powerful as the magic we felt when we were kids.